All right, good morning and welcome to the Extended Disc webinar. Today we are going to be covering part two. And it's okay if you didn't hear part one because we've recorded it. Today we're going to be talking about using team assessments from a manager's perspective. So using the team assessment as a manager's tool. And we'll talk about that. Let me just do a quick logistics. As usual, it's 30 minutes packed. Don't have time for questions. However, we encourage you to put your questions in the question section, and I promise you we'll follow up with it after the webinar today. It will be recorded. So feel free to share the link when we let you know with any of your coworkers or counterparts or anyone that you know might be interested. So welcome. My name is Christina. I'm a senior trainer here at Extended Disc, and I'm here again with my boss, President and CEO of Extended Disc, Marku. Welcome.
Thank you, Christina. Good to see you.
Yeah, so here we are again, part two.
Part two of the team assessment webinar series, right? Yes, last time we talked about how to use the team assessment in team settings, because that's what the name implies. And then team applications are, I think, by far the most popular for the team assessment. But more and more we are seeing how the managers are using the team assessment, and that's going to really be the focus of the webinar today. Because in the last webinar a couple of weeks ago, what we talked about is how team members can really understand how they work together. How can we work more productively, more successfully together? How it can be a better contributor to the team, and how can we maybe work with some frictions and conflicts that we may have amongst ourselves. Today we're going to look at the same information, well, I shouldn't say same information, similar information, but from a different angle. The report we're going to talk about today is how the manager can really use this, and I really call it the manager's playbook. And then I think in July 6th, we're going to have the last series on this, how we look at it from a kind of more macro level, from the CEO, owner, or the organizational viewpoint.
He says last, but you never know with him.
That's true.
All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started?
Well, let me first talk about the progression, kind of how it actually happens in practice. I think that will give us, the audience, a little bit better understanding how it really works. The first step in the process of using team assessment, believe it or not, is to actually use some of the individual assessments. And today when we talk about the manager's playbook, how to use the team assessment from a manager's viewpoint, I'm going to keep it in a context of selling. Now, please keep in mind that the context could be customer service, it could be just intact work group. I think the flow of the webinar will be easy if we keep the kind of one point of view. I'm going to focus on sales. So what happens first is that the individual sales professional will complete the individual assessment, and they will get an assessment that could be called sales professional assessment. As probably everybody knows, we can tailor these assessments for the content, look, and feel. But let's assume that Monica here gets her report. This report is for her development, how I become a better sales professional, how I become more successful by not only understanding very clearly what my natural and behavioral style tendencies are, how do I communicate with my prospects, how I motivate them, how do I tend to sell. So this is for Monica, so she understands how I can become more effective. So that's typically what first happens.
So we start with ourselves first. How do we become more self-aware?
Yeah, and for the sales team and the manager to really use the playbook, they need to understand the DISC model. And always we start from the individual level. What are my behavioral tendencies? And we talked about that 4-step approach so many times. I don't need to reiterate today, but that's really the starting point for the progression. So now Monica gets her report and we can use it. Maybe the sales coach gets involved, helping her, or the sales manager can get involved. How do we use this information to help you become more successful as a sales professional?
And then, so where do we go from once Monica becomes more self-aware?
So now that Monica has completed the questionnaire, we can, without having to ask her to do it again, we can now go to the online database and reorder the results in a different format. This is still focusing on Monica, but this report is designed for the manager, how they can become the most effective manager with Monica, how when I'm coaching her, when I'm trying to develop her as a sales professional. So it's written from a viewpoint of how to manage Monica, how to be most effective manager and leader for Monica. It's still focusing on individual behaviors, but it's from a different perspective.
So what I'm hearing is that Monica takes the extended DISC questionnaire one time. And from that, you can actually generate 2 different reports, one that targets the individual themselves and one that can be specifically designed for the manager.
Exactly. And if you think about this, when Monica gets her report, everybody loves to read about the most important person, myself.
Of course.
So Monica gets her report, and we want to give her a lot of very actionable information. But as a manager, let's say I have a sales team of 15 salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't just simply have the time or maybe not the patience, or I can't comprehend these lengthy reports. I want information that is very specific about how to most effectively lead, motivate, develop my sales professionals. So the report for the sales manager is going to be different. Again, please keep in mind, I'm keeping in context of selling. We can have this for the other job roles as well. But now if I'm Monica's manager, I have an assessment that will help me be more effective with her one-on-one.
So the progression is, now we're looking at, it's still an individual report based on the individual, but it's specifically tailored to the manager. So what in this report can be useful?
Well, I was just going to show one small example of the report. And by the way, you don't have to have a report for the manager, but I think it's a very valuable tool because looking at the individual assessment, it's really written for Monica in this case. This report will be written for Monica's manager. It's going to be more effective, and it's going to provide the information that is more relevant. One of these things could be that very quickly we can look at what are Monica's greatest sales strengths and development areas. So as a manager, when I'm setting into my, let's say, monthly sales coaching session with her, I can have a quick reminder, okay, here are her strengths, her natural strengths, and where are some of the things that are more challenging for her. Maybe I need to make sure that these strengths, when overused, don't become her liabilities. And maybe I need to look at some of these development areas that we really need to focus on today and continue again to help her to be more and more successful.
Okay. So just highlighting the manager's report. Next steps, where do we go from here?
Well, now next step is really what we're talking about today is actually looking at the team assessment. And here we now actually take all of the sales team members and put in one report. We'll have still some familiar components to it. But again, this team report is not written for the team members themselves. This is specifically for the team manager. That's why I call it the playbook, because when I go to visit our clients' offices, a lot of the managers have this in their top desk drawer. And some of them, you can see, they all kind of torn up and they're being used frequently, which I'm very happy to see. But the idea is that you have very accessible, quick information to refer to when you are not only meeting one-on-one with your sales team, but also when you're conducting, let's say, those sales meetings that you probably conduct at least once a week. So you kind of quick reference there. So prepare, you kind of switch your gears to make sure that you are modifying your leadership behaviors as well as you can.
So again, it's not something that your team has to go and take an additional assessment. All these reports that you're showing us, the individual, the manager's report, and now the team manager's report, that's still based on one assessment that each of your team members have taken.
Yeah, I'm so glad you bring that up, because that's the idea. Each member only completes the questionnaire one time, and now we can actually get the information and show it in different ways.
Okay.
So again, looking at the sales team, this is helping for the manager to really understand how I'm going to be a most effective leader. How do I communicate with my team? How do I motivate them to really understand how I can be most effective? Because what tends to happen is that when we are managers, we tend to become, whether we want it or not, we tend to become kind of a daily routine. We tend to become very task-oriented. You wake up in the morning, you have these are the things I want to achieve. This is my list of goals for today, and I'm motivated, I'm energetic, I'm getting ready to do it. But throughout the day, we tend to become task-oriented because a lot of times unexpected things happen. I think every manager can relate to this. Hey, I have this schedule laid out, and these are the things I want to accomplish. And 9:30, something unexpected happens. It could be something really, really good, a great opportunity. Hey, here we have this potential new business we could get, or some other kind of opportunity. Or, of course, we also have to deal with unexpected problems. And that kind of throws off our plan. We're not able to execute it as we really designed when we were having a morning cup of coffee. And we become task-oriented rather than looking at how I can actually be the most effective leader. I get tangled with these my small problems and opportunities that divert my attention to really be able to be as successful. Because as a managers, our success is not evaluated how much I contribute individually. It's how well my team, my department performs. And I need to kind of step back and make sure that I'm delegating and I'm really developing all of my team players to their fullest potential. But things like goals and that are there all the time remind me that I need to get these things done. We need to achieve results. It's easy to become again task oriented. And the manager's playbook really is designed to help me to look at it from more of a macro level, at 30,000 feet. How do I really develop my teams and make sure that they execute the plan?
Yeah, I know that for many of us, we kind of come to work, we have a set agenda, we envision what our day's supposed to be look like, but the only real expected thing is the unexpected happens. Don't you feel like you're constantly putting out fires some days?
Yeah, well, it is. And the communication today is fast. And I'm just learning to turn off my email, kind of working offline every night. If I need to get things done, execute my plan, I just need to turn off my email. Otherwise, they keep bombarding and it diverts my attention. And I get sucked into those smaller tasks that are preventing me focusing on executing the bigger plan. So if we have the discipline to do those kind of things and also using tools like the manager's playbook, it really helps us to really focus on what is the larger vision that we're trying to execute. What are those bigger goals that we're trying to do and achieve, rather than getting entangled with these smaller details.
Yeah, and I notice you have here managers' pressures. And, one of the things we say here at DISC is when we're under pressure, as managers even, we tend to revert back to our natural style. So it's that self-awareness for us again. That kind of sounds like what you're kind of talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the big picture really is that we want to be successful. As a manager, we want to be successful. And in order for me to be successful as a manager, I need to be an effective leader. And in order for me to be an effective leader, I need to modify my leadership behaviors, whether it's one-on-one with my different styles of employees. I can't use the same approach. Or, of course, I can, but I should not use the same approach with every employee. It's always thinking about how can I be most effective with this particular employee. And then when I'm working with my entire team in meetings, or I'm trying to introduce something new when everybody's in the room, I need to understand who I'm communicating with and what kind of adjustment, again, in that context I must make. And that's really what this is all about.
Okay. So using this, what we call now the manager's playbook, where are some of the areas that we should be highlighting or looking at in the report itself?
Well, I'm going to look at one thing is let's start with the name map. You may remember from our webinar a couple of weeks ago, we looked at the shotgun map that identifies the natural behavioral styles of each of the team members. Mm-hmm. Here, obviously, as a manager, I know who my employees are. I probably don't find the shotgun map as helpful. I want to see their names. I want to identify where everybody is. So if you think of a sports analogy, as a coach, you want to understand what kind of players you have in your team. And this gives me the big picture. What kind of a sales team in this context I have? How many Ds I have, how many Is I have, and so on. Are there any concentration of styles like we talked about in the last webinar, and what kind of impact that may have? But it really helps me understand what my strengths and possible weaknesses could be. And it gives me the starting point of thinking about what do I need to do as a manager to elevate the performance of my team.
So basically, I think what we said last time was too, just because you only have one person in the D quadrant, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a weakness, right?
Not at all. In fact, I might be very happy about that. Mm-hmm. The context is everything. We need to look at what behaviors create success. And if D behaviors don't particularly advance my cause, so to speak, I may be happy about that. Not to say that I don't need that D individual, and I want to make sure that they are as successful as can be. And we, of course, never want to classify in terms of performance, good or bad, or better or worse. But it helps me understand that this is the kind of team I'm dealing with. Now, how do I actually, what kind of decisions I need to make? What kind of behaviors in terms of my leadership and communications I need to use to become more and more successful?
Yeah, so it sounds like in our previous, when we worked with the team itself, the shotgun map was much more relevant. But as you can see, we've tailored this one where really for this manager, they don't need the shotgun map.
And what I remember, we talked about the context. Actually, this is the same team map we used a couple of weeks ago. Then we looked at it from the context of the team members. Mm-hmm. If team members are looking at this, The interpretation is going to be one thing. If I'm the manager of this team, trust me, my interpretation is going to be slightly different because my viewpoint and what I'm trying to achieve and my motivations are somewhat different. The meaning will be different. And that's another example why context is everything when we look at the team assessment results.
Great. Okay. So we're looking again at attributes in the report.
And now we go into more of a last thing we looked at was the map. That's about a macro level. That's kind of the team I have. Now the team assessment or the manager's playbook can provide the manager very actionable, detailed information about how I can become most effective with each of my team members. So if I think in terms of coaching them one-on-one, maybe I'll make sales calls with my different sales professional to really observe what they are doing and try to help them that way, or just trying to make sure that they are as motivated and empowered as they can be. I need to understand and be reminded of what their behavioral traits are. So this part of the report simply, and I'm just showing here only 3 of the team members, it provides very quickly what are the attributes of each of my team members. So if I'm looking at Sandy, for example, I can see she's calm, steady, patient, and so on. So when I'm going to a meeting with Sandy, maybe I want to pull this out of my desk drawer, a quick reference. Okay, Sandy, all right, now I can shift my gears and think about how I want to approach her. What type of coaching setting is most conducive and most motivating and most comfortable for Sandy? So the setting that I create is one that is really conducive to a wonderful and a productive conversation. Now, when I'm meeting with Monica, I need to again change my style. And if I don't keep reminded of how to make these changes, I cannot be quite as successful. Otherwise, I tend to, again, use that word autopilot. I just don't modify my behavior. Here's a quick reminder. What do I need to do with each of my team members?
And we always say that, your attributes are just visual representations of a person's natural styles, just an easy way to get that picture in your head of how they tend to do things.
Yeah, and this part of the manager's playbook, I really look at like the quick reference card. I use the quick reference card still daily. And I'm sometimes like, I should know this inside out. And I do know it inside and out, but something about that visual reminder, have it in my hand and seeing those words. For example, when I'm talking with one of our clients on the phone and they may have a question about somebody's report, somehow almost automatically I pull that out. I see this part of the manager's playbook as a kind of a quick reference card for the team. Yes.
I like that. See, I've learned something new today.
So I'm going to highlight another part. Again, Christine, I'm showing certain parts of the report, and maybe a manager will say, I don't need this. And of course, we can tailor the report, we can delete it, we can add something else. But this is a very popular section, is how to manage my sales team. And this section really helps me understand what the expectations are by my different team members. Because when I'm meeting with my sales team members, my sales professionals, trust me, they have some expectations.
You're saying expectations of me as a manager.
Exactly.
Okay.
And if I'm not reminded or conscious of what those expectations are, of course, I'm not going to be as successful. So this is kind of a quick reference card when it comes to the expectations. I can quickly look at Sandy, David, Monica, and so on, my team members, what kind of expectations they have, and what would be my ideal leadership style with my different employees. So I can then look at it and be reminded of, again, how to modify my behavioral style. I do believe that managers who understand DISC and are fluent in the language of DISC, they know most of these things. But even then, they want to get information that is very specific and clear about what do I need to do with specific employees. One option would be to pull up that person's, 20, 30, 40-page report, whatever your preference is, and be reminded of that way and have to read that. Most managers simply don't have the time, the patience to do that. Here they can get very quickly, almost in a bullet point format, and then they can think about, okay, what do I do right now with my meeting with so-and-so?
Yeah, just pull out even certain pages. So how to manage your teams is basically tips for you as a manager to better and more effectively manage each of your team members.
Yeah, and then we can move to how to motivate. Let's go up one there. How to motivate each of the team members. One is what the expectations are. If I know what Sandy's expectations are as me as a manager, I can make some adjustments. But now, of course, I want her to be motivated to take some action, and I need to understand what some of those motivators are. And this section gives me that very quickly. Again, I don't have the time to read lengthy reports. I need it very quickly. Here it is. This is what I need to do with Monica. Go to the meeting, and I can move on.
All right.
All right, let's kind of move on. Now, one of the things here, and okay, please remember again, Christina, we are looking at sales team. So if you're a customer service manager, I have to say, I'm sorry, this is not going to, the examples I'm showing here today are not going to be as relevant, but trust me, we have these kind of behavioral dimensions for all of the different kind of job roles. We have about 2,000 different behavioral dimensions from which we can choose to create these, not only the individual assessments, but the team assessments. Now here I'm looking at a sales team, and I may want to see what are their natural comfort levels with specific sales behaviors. Like here, my example is assertively driving to the end result. And I'm just including in the screen 3 of my, I think I have 16 team members. And I can very quickly see that Monica is very comfortable with this behavior. And she is comfortable in assertively driving to the end result, while Sandy is going to take a little bit more conscious effort to do so. Doesn't mean she cannot do it, but it's going to take concentration, energy, and effort. And by the way, just because Monica is most comfortable with this, it may not be a good thing. It could be that maybe because of the product we are selling, the kind of prospects we typically sell into, this might be actually something that could be a liability for Monica. And when I'm coaching her, I may need to constantly remind her that, hey, this is your natural tendency. How do we make sure we tone that down a little bit in order to make sure that prospects don't see you even as aggressive or abrasive?
Yeah. So as we always say, just because you fall more to the right side, where behavior is more comfortable for you, what typically gets us into trouble is not our weaknesses, but the fact that we tend to overuse our strengths. So that's just another key awareness in using these behavioral graphs.
Yeah, and because I'm a very visual person, and I think there are probably some other visual individuals on the audience, this is what it would look actually in reality, where all of the team members would be. Here are some other behavioral tendencies, like actively listening to prospects and customers' needs, being open to accept coaching in sales. And again, we have hundreds, but 2,000 of these different
2,000 plus, yeah.
From to choose from. But I can very quickly see what my team looks like with specific behaviors that are important to me. You know, if there are something that's not important to a specific manager, we take those out, because it needs to be things that are relevant and the information needs to be quickly accessible so they can use it. If anything becomes too complex or cumbersome, my experience is that people don't use it. You need to keep it simple. That way it is something that you can actually use day in and day out.
Yeah, I like it because it gives you, again, that quick visual picture of, you know, your team style and where it plays out in a certain behavior.
That's right. The last thing I want to talk about today is one of my favorites, as you know, arrow map. Arrow map, you know, this is the same arrow map we looked at in our last webinar. We looked at it from the perspective of the team members. Team members could then think about, why are we making, as a team, these kind of modifications to our behavioral style? And again, the interpretation here is that the starting point of the arrow is the location of the natural hardwired behavioral style. And the tip of the arrow, or I should say the arrow, shows how they perceive I need to modify my behavior right now in order to be successful at the present time. So we look in a specific point in time. So when the team members look at it, the interpretation is one thing. Now, as a manager, when I'm looking at this, my interpretation is going to be a little bit different. What I find with the arrow maps is that when we look at the adjustments that the people are making, there are a couple of things that have a significant influence on those adjustments. But number one thing is, I believe strongly, is the manager. Because the manager is the one who's evaluating them, performance reviews. The manager is the one who provides the expectations and sets out the goals. So the employees, when they make these modifications, they're really trying to be successful. In order to be successful, they need to be successful in the eyes of their manager. So that is one of the key drivers of these adjustments. So if I'm a manager, what I need to do is I need to look at these adjustments and say, are they what I expect or want them to be? Because I need to realize that I'm probably the biggest reason these arrows go to this direction. This is what I want to see.
Oh, that's a good way to think about this. So you're saying that the manager is the key driver, and is the team responding to my expectations, kind of.
Exactly. So if I'm a manager, I should have clear understanding what I want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, if I don't, it's going to be reflective on the errors. Errors are going to go every which way because the employees don't know what the expectations are. We're going to have a lot of uncertainty there. What sometimes happens is the managers, they call a consultant, a trainer, or whoever it may be, that they seek some help. Hey, that my team is not performing. I need some help. These guys they can't get things done. And a lot of times the managers assume that the problem is with the team. Mm-hmm. Team members have something inherently wrong with them. I don't know what it is. Come, please help me, rescue me over here. But the challenge often is the problem is the manager. Mm-hmm. And if the manager is not clear about, again, laying out the vision and the goals and the expectations and setting out a clear path to success for the team members, there is no chance that they become very successful. So the arrow map can be very revealing about what's really happening. And as a leader of the manager of this team, I can then really evaluate, are these the kind of changes I want to make? Do I need to do something better? Do I need to adjust my behavioral style? And I think one thing we didn't really talk about earlier in the arrow map is that the arrow map and the name map really helps me manage the team as a whole. Mm-hmm. And if you think about conducting, let's say, my weekly meetings, if I understand what kind of a makeup of the team I have, it really gives me a clear understanding of how I need to communicate with the team as a whole. If I have a lot of C-styles in my team, it becomes very important for me to provide a lot of information, answer those why questions. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm dealing with more of a I team or a D team, I probably want to provide as little detail as possible, because obviously that is not something that is as motivating and engaging for that kind of audience. So it provides me that big picture guidance as well. I know we talked about how to do one-on-one things here, but it also provides me the both sides, the big picture, and how to help my individual contributors to become more successful.
Okay, so it sounds like the arrow map is great feedback for a manager to kind of view where they stand with their team.
And it takes a temperature of where I am right now. How am I coming across to my team, and do they really do they receive the message the same way I want to intend it to be delivered? And you can take that and just take that arrow map and put it on one of these flip chart papers and put it on your office wall. If you're a manager, it's a constant reminder of what my team is all about. It helps me to very quickly look at this and, hey, I'm going to Monica's office now. I'm going to have a little sales coaching session. Again, what are some of the things that I need to think about in order to adjust my style? Also, and this is a question that comes up a lot. Hey, how do I make DISC part of my culture? We want to have the extended DISC assessments, and we have a fantastic training session, a lot of fun doing it, understanding how people are different, and the light bulbs go off, and people begin to have this awareness of different styles of people. But what do we actually do with this? When a manager puts this on their office wall, a couple of things happen. One is, if I'm working for this manager and I go to her office and I see this on the wall, it tells me very clearly, this is important to her. I better make it important for me as well. That's one thing. Second is, the other managers will come and visit their office and they say, hey, what's that? Oh, that's my arrow map for my team. Tell me about it. Well, conversation ensues. Guess what that other manager is going to do? Hey, this manager has a competitive edge over me. Mm-hmm. This is competitive stuff. I want to have one of these. What do I need to do to make this happen? And then it begins to permeate the whole culture of the organization. It becomes part of it. There's a couple other things that are beyond this webinar, how to build in culture, but that's one very visual and effective and simple way to do it.
Well, thank you. So I think the kind of takeaway today is, as a manager, it's not about just working with your team, identifying it as dysfunctional, but any team can benefit from using the team assessment from a team perspective as well as from a manager's perspective. So I just want to thank Markku today for joining us. We do have, as Markku had mentioned, part 3 of our Using Team Assessments webinar. It will be coming up and focused on team assessments at an organizational level. It will be coming up on Thursday, July 6th at 10 a.m. We'll be sending out information about how to register.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be an interesting topic, and it kind of illustrates the team assessments that is a versatile tool. And one of the things that I hope that not only today's webinar, but all of these 3 webinars on team assessment makes it clear that it's not only a team development tool. Like, we talked about the team aspect last time. Today, we're talking about how it's really the manager's tool. And then next time, we'll talk about how it can be the CEO, so the top managers, C-level managers, owners tool to really have a more effective organization, more successful organization.
Well, I've learned something new today, so I actually will look forward to the next one. Thank you guys all for joining us, and we will talk to you guys again soon.